Oh, we are live on Facebook also.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Are
I
we?
think there are 19 of us right now here.
Ishili, you can begin.
Okay. Okay. Hello and a very warm welcome to this first IPPL International webinar. And I am delighted to see everyone here. And as I've been just telling before, we have Malusri Di, who's joining us from Delhi. We have Bashopi Di, who's joining us from Edinburgh. So it is intercultural, international, absolutely. It's wonderful that we could have all of you with us. We had been thinking about this webinar for quite some time, given the situation that we are in right now. And I would just like to tell that we at IBPL have been having these poetry events where members have been posting their poems in the IPPL WhatsApp group. And we've been having very active participation, not just from poets writing their poems, but we've also have very good responses from readers as well. So, and we've been picking up themes, various themes over a period of time. And we were so happy with the kind of involvement of everyone that we thought we should have a webinar where we could hear um, new voices. And today's poetry reading has new poets who have not performed in IPPL events before. And I think it is because of this online platform that we are able to have many people who possibly would have found it difficult otherwise to physically come to our IPPL library. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And I would like now to invite Sanjukta Di, our president, to please say a few words. Sanjukta Di.
I'm overwhelmed that we would, after in this lockdown, we were really wondering how we could remain in touch with our more than 100 members in our IPPL team. But our executive committee members have been excellent in trying to bring forward a sort of very, very dynamic connectivity between all the poets through various programs. As some of you who have been a part of our group know, that every Sunday they have been able to hold poetry submissions, absolutely brand new poems. It is not that people were just fishing out their old poems and trying to post them, but according to the themes, according to the requirements, whether it was lockdown, whether it was spring, whether it was Boishak, whether it was Rabindranath, there were so many lovely poems and we learned from each other. And it was I think one of the most exciting experiences of being a part of IPPL, because of the simple fact that people would say, oh, these are not going to be really published. I'll never see these poems in print. So why should I make the effort? But nothing like that happened. Every time we invited our members to contribute, to send in their poems, they very happily did that, experimented a lot in terms of content as well as style. And of course, Dharmaji, who will be speaking today, introduced us to a sort of a bilingual style, which she knew that are limitations, so she kept it bilingual, but if necessary, she can also switch to Latin. So, but there she clearly thought that no, she would not prove to us about our ignorance to that. She's always been very, very perceptive about the limitations of many of us. And so she restricted herself to bilingual, Bangla and English. And we had great fun learning to do that. And I was expecting there would be more poems, not only in Bangla, but in Hindi and other Indian languages. But that hasn't happened yet. But I hope there will be a time when we will have also submissions and also readings by those who write in other Indian languages. We are not going to restrict ourselves only to the English language or to Bangla and Hindi. And there I would like to sort of ask all of you that if you have friends who write in other Indian languages or any language for that matter, and we can get it translated into English too, it would be, I think we would be very enriched if we had that experience. And I'm sure IPPL, we have a journal also, would like to even sort of publish those poems and the translations in them. So I will not prolong this any further. Today we start, as Nishi and Madhu will tell you, that we thought that we would start with a panel discussion. This is not something extraordinary because this is what we do routinely in the IPPL face-to-face events. And so, Nishi, would you like to introduce the plan for today?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Just before we begin the panel discussion on popular demand, and this is our first webinar, so there is, everyone wants to hear Shangita sing. So we thought of beginning this with the song by Shangita.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.
Shangita.
Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Swami Sharanam Paramam Maheshwaram Devatanam Paramancha Dvai Vatam Pate Patina Paramang Parasta Vedama Devam Bhuvaneshtam Jaitat Vidodam Rita Ste Bhavanti Jaitat Vedodamrita Ste Bhavanti Swami Sharanam Paramam Maheshwaram
Baba.
Wonderful,
Shadhu.
Shangita. This is a wonderful way to begin the whole thing.
Sundar.
Thank you.
Shadhu.
Thank you so much, Shangita.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we would now begin our program, and before the panel discussion begins, I would like to introduce our eminent panelists and the moderator for the day. Our first panelist is Professor Bashubi Fraser, who needs no introduction. Bhashvidhi is the founder and the chief ideator of the Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library. She is a poet, a children's writer, an editor, a translator, and an academic. She's a professor emerita and a former professor of English and creative writing. She's the co-founder and director of the Scottish Centre of Tagore Studies and the chief editor of the academic and creative e-journal, which is called Gitanjali and Beyond. Bhashvidhi is also a Royal Literary Fund Fellow at the University of Dundee and an honorary fellow at the Centre for South Asian Studies at the University of Edinburgh. And for us, among all of this, she's a Bhashvidhi. And we're delighted to have you here with us today.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Professor Jhonna Sannal. Jhonna Di is retired professor, Department of English, University of Calcutta. And she is teacher to many of us who are here today. She is an eminent academician. She writes poetry, short story, and she translates. One of her translated books is The Magic Web and Other Stories, Asha Purna Devi on the Widow and Her World. Her latest book of poetry is The Nomadic Trail. Jhonna Di is also a painter par excellence, and she holds regular exhibitions. This I did not know, Jhonna Di. Thank you so much for being with us. And she too is our very own Jhonna Di. So very warm welcome to you. And the moderator for today's panel discussion is Dr. Joydeep Sharungi. Joydeep is the principal of New Alipur College. And Joydeep is the very dynamic vice president of IPPL. He is a poet. He has got quite a number of books on poetry. He's also a translator and a writer and editor. So a very warm welcome to Joydeep as well. And I would like Joydeep to now continue with the proceedings.
Thank you, Nishi. Thank you, Nishi. And big thank you to Team IPPL for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you, Malashruti, for being here and who is a constant support to IPPL always. And no word is sufficient for Shangjuktari. And all dignitaries present here. Bhashvidhi, I think you had a talk today, I think in Kolkata College, one of the Kolkata colleges, and I think Gokhale Memorial College, and you moved hearts there because many of our colleagues are speaking high of your talk and Amrita's talk today. And I think that's in Gokhale Memorial College. Welcome, Jhonna Di, for this very special session. And let's begin with Bhashvidhi. I think this is a very important time in 21st century where the role of the poet is different and poetry is taking different shapes. So as a practicing poet and a critic of poetry, how do you look yourself and your role to society and to you and the better community?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joydeep, for a wonderful and very generous introduction. And can I thank IPPL under the leadership of Shangjukta with Joydeep and Nishi and all the members and advisors like Mala for keeping poetry alive for the nation and for the world. And great to have Jhonna Di on board, whom I respect, who wasn't directly my teacher, but could have been. So thank you very much. As a poet, I think it's quite humbling to think that we have a role to play, but I do feel that in times of crisis, poets can think and rethink the times and express them. One weapon, if I may use such a word, they have is of metaphoric representation. So the fear of being silenced, the fear of reprisal can be avoided by the very power of words, which can couch a lot of the meaning. So I think poets can be very political, and those who are with them can read between the lines. And yet, authorities cannot send them to jail always for that. So I think poets have that role to play in keeping alive hope, in making literature and art of paramount importance, because ultimately it's culture that keeps us alive, and how shall I put it, actually inspires us to believe in the future. In this time, I have actually, Joydeep has led with Amelia Walker a huge project in Australia, and I was honored to be part of it. And it was quite interesting as we were nearing the end of the project when Joydeep and Amelia came back to all of us and said, we cannot ignore the pandemic. We cannot ignore what is happening now. So could the poets respond to that? And that is what I think poets do. They respond to the times. They are with the times, they're of the times, they're embedded in the culture. They are the voice of society, but they brook no borders. They're poets without borders. They speak beyond their nation to the world. And that can be done through translation if they don't share the same language. But because the poetic form is so succinct, so and is quite contained, they can say a lot within that framework. I think that is the role of the poet in times of crisis. There have been a lot of reflections on the times, and many poets have been writing about it, including Lockdown by Simon Armitage, our poet laureate here. And I have heard a lot of beautiful Bengali videos through WhatsApp on the times about what is happening, and rousing and moving. So I think poets do have a major role to play through their art in times of crisis like ours today.
But Bashaviti, do you think that the serious poetry will not be written or may not be performed through webinar that we are doing? So because serious poetry needs serious attention of the audience, do you think will it be lost?
Actually, you raised a very good point, Joydeep. I think poetry, by the very nature of the fact that it uses rhythm, words, and multiple meaning, actually needs to be read out. Poetry is not to be read only in the privacy of your house or your bedroom. So webinars like this actually give a platform to poetry which needs to be voiced, where the rhythm of the poem will carry the burden of the meaning. So I think a webinar is rather a good platform.
Wonderful. So actually, Bashaviti, you are in the UK for a long time. You are part of the diaspora over there. So how do you see that Indian diaspora in the UK, and how are they been covered in the magazines, newspapers, and journals in the UK?
I think we have quite a few newspapers who publish poetry in Britain. I can't say that the diaspora has found a voice there, but I know that people are writing, and we do give space to diaspora a lot. Can I say that we have books that have come out, anthologies, and I have a few with me. One was published as far back as 2003. It's called Rainbow World, which Devjani Chatterjee and I co-edited, brought out by Hodder Children's Books. There are a lot of diasporic voices here. This was written long before the pandemic. But before that, there was another anthology called Wish I Was Here. And that, you see that the person on the cover who looks like a Sufi saint is a wonderful writer from India. Well, he's second generation, called Irfan Merchant. And he's on the cover. And he trained as a doctor. And when the interviewer asked him, why have you never practiced as a doctor? He said, well, I did medicine because my parents wanted me to, but I always wanted to be a poet. And he has been writing for a long time. And this book has quite a lot of diasporic poets in it. And, the last book I would like to highlight is Thali Katori, which Alan Riek and we brought out, of Scots who went to India and wrote about India, and South Asians who have come because the Scots were once there, they've come here, and they are writing right now. So there are poets like Nalini Paul and Tariq Latif and Suhail Sadi and Irfan Merchant and Shampa Roy, just to mention a few, Hamid Shami, who have been writing as diasporic poets, but who very much have integrated and don't feel that they have to write from the margins anymore, that they can write about Scottish trees, they can write about British birds, they can write about being part of a community here and their own response to their experiences, not necessarily about racism, but about integration, being part of a community. So they are strong voices and they are writing. And can I just tell IPPL that we have just sent out a call for contributions on popular demand as a response to the Times for Gitanjali and Beyond. It's issue 5, and it is asking you to respond to the pandemic, to the lockdown, and to the future. And of course, we rely on Rabindranath to lead the way. So we have his words there. So I think we now want to see that work in print in the public eye. And webinars like this can then become a platform for poets who are writing now to read the poems they write as a response to the times. Wonderful. Does that answer your question, Joydeep?
Wonderful, 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 Bashwadi. And actually, this question, the next one that we're going to talk, possibly, you are one of the authorities on Tagore studies. You have worked a lot, and your last book is a big market success, and it gave new insight to Tagore studies. And how do you see Tagore is still with us in these days of new normal? And what kind of hope or aspiration or inspiration, we can say, that we look forward to Tagore in these days?
I think Tagore, Rabindranath is always relevant. He is too great a mind to avoid, ignore. He will stay with us. And as one of the titles of Shangjukta's books say, he is radical. And we do need radical change. So Tagore is very relevant. He spoke about, he linked the past with the present as he went back to the Tapovan and saw our own heritage, the message from the forest, how education needs to be continuous with nature, how man needs to blend with the environment, and how we should all work through cooperation, all the nations, how internationalism should rise above narrow nationalism, and how we can only survive as together if we through mutual respect and not through stigmatizing groups and but by bringing everybody together. But I think what Rabindranath also did is to show that the East has something to offer. You know, for a long time, we had this Eurocentric idea of the standard and the universal coming from the West. But I think post-colonialism has subverted that. But actually, Tagore was one of the first post-colonialists. And I think, and he was Chiro Nuton, and he was always modern. So I think if Tagore is our epitome of what modernity is, Tagore is really relevant for the present through his idea of human beings working with nature, the whole idea that the past and present and the future are blended together through the fact that the world needs to work together through cooperation, and the fact that we need to share knowledge. As we we are looking for a vaccine and treatment, that's exactly what we need. We need to share knowledge, including Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, Tibetan herbal medicine, and Arab medicine, and modern Western medicine. And all that needs to come together. And I think that is what Tagore comes in as always relevant and a voice for a sustainable future.
Yes, for sustainable future. Wonderful. And can we come to Janadi? Janadi, you have worked a lot on translations. And so what will be your take on contemporary poetry, both in Bangla and English?
I had always felt that because of our geopolitical situation, India is a land with a vast resource of poetry as well. If you think of regional poetry, including English, which is very much an Indian language. Once a botanist friend of mine told me that when you see the trees on the soil, you see them as independent trees. But if you go below the soil, you will find all the roots are intertwined. And if any tree is short of water, the other trees would supply. This was a kind of nature's education, which I thought was so very important and powerful. You see, in the case of English poetry and Bangla, English, of course, being the language of power, the language of global communication, is of course occupies a kind of privileged place. It is the language of power and privilege. And therefore, I have also felt that particularly when we are situated in the we need to see this poetry in relation to or along with, let me put it this way, along with Bangla poetry as well. Because that might, sort of, I wouldn't say change, but change our perspective on both the poets. Because after all, we need to remember that English is a homogeneous, urban, upper middle class group. Whereas in Bengali poetry, you would find that in the suburbs, in the villages also, there are poets who seem to be activists, writing poetry under the trees, under the ruins or wherever they find a place, they would sit, not with a laptop, but with a pen and a paper. So, that is the kind of difference. When I read English poetry, being a student of English, being a lover of poetry, I do find, homelessness is a kind of anguish in English poetry. So you find various poets would be talking about carrying their home. Whenever I travel, I carry my home with me, or my home within my home and exile. So this I think is a kind of anguish which you find in English poetry. English poetry is, on the one hand, you see, very cosmopolitan, transnational, reaches out to the world. And its modernity is of one kind along with technological progress. But in Bangla poetry, what we find is modernity perhaps consists in contemporaneizing the epics, the Purans, etc. So that there is a home from which they can fly and come back. Just give me. I could read, not read, just refer to one poem. How Bhishma, one of the characters of Mahabharata, the blind patriarch, he has been reinvented in modern Bangla poetry many times in various roles. And they are talking about contemporary,
বাবা তুমি শুনতে পাচ্ছ কিছু
the present day. So I will just read one parts of a poem, which also has perhaps another interest for us. This poem is called Bhishma by Joshodhara Rai Chaudhuri. I don't know how many of you have read it, but it's very interesting because she talks of a ভদ্রলোক সব কিছু বুঝতে পারে কিন্তু কিছু করার ছিল না, আর করার ছিল না বলেই মোটা চশমায় সারাদিন স্টেটসম্যান পড়তেন আর লিখতেন স্টেটসম্যানকে, এ সম্পাদক আমাদের দেশে শিশু মৃত্যুর হার কেন এত বেশি? And the family gets poorer and poorer, and he goes on writing these letters to the editor. হে সম্পাদক, জলে কেন আর্সেনিক, তৃতীয় বিশ্বের শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থায় কেন এত ত্রুটি, আমাদের মূল্যস্ফীতি কেন এত ভয়াবহ? I find letters to the editor, the statesman, will have a permanent place in Indian poetry. Because this kind of, reinvention in Bangla poetry has a kind of, or in fact, leads us to, to look back, to not look back, but I would say to reinvent the tradition here. So this is one point. And Joydeep, another thing which, since you were talking about the 21st century, about the new turns in poetry, for the new turns in poetry, we find that IPPL itself is a kind of, well, I was almost tempted to say a minefield, but well, a gold mine, where we find young people, writing poems of various kinds, very powerful, very mature, and I would say giving a sort of, there is positively a kind of a new direction, new approach. Say, for example, you see, and one thing, because these poets are IPPL poets, I'm not taking the names, I'm just relating to the poets. And here you see, if we look at the difference, partition has always been a kind of heavy baggage with our generation. But these young poets, you see, a poem like A Poem for Dark Times, many of you might have read it, where the poem goes thus: let us plagiarize a chunk of verse, I'm reading from the middle, from a Hindu poem and profane it with the lines of a Muslim poem. And then let us put out the light and sing the words of that poem and see if the words kill each other and cease to be. There is a kind of, metaphysical wit, a kind of, impish questioning, I believe, of the elder generation's attitude to it. And another poem which deals with, not the Hindu-Muslim thing, but a partition poem. This is a non-IPPL poet who is talking about her father who left Pakistan, West Pakistan, comes to Chandigarh. The 2 BHK flat he doesn't like. He loved bhindi ki sabzi. And when he comes back, you know, to his daughter's house in Mumbai, he doesn't like it. And after he's gone, you know, the daughter says his home, after his real home was taken away by an imaginary line drawn by a white man. And whenever I cut the bodies of okra stems like a country, I think of you. You know, this kind of sort of very trivializing, casual attitude to history, you know, this marks a kind of embeddedness into the history of the nation, which the young people have embodied in a very good way. And so you see, and another point which I would like to make, since Songjukta was talking about, you know, Bangla and all, we have seen, you know, in IPPL, among some of the IPPL poets, using Bangla lines within the body of the English text. Well, the reason, I do not know how everyone accepts it. Well, since you also are readers, well, my question to you would be, how do you take these poems or this approach?
Jardani, for English poems, suppose many have used Greek quotations and Latin quotations as epigraph or within the text. If it is not violation of aesthetics, how can in an Indian incorporates Hindi lines or Bangla lines in English? How can that be for grounding?
Well, you see, my logic or my argument goes thus. You see, first of all, politically with all the regional languages being almost marginalized by this, if we could bring in Indian regional quotations, we have used so many other quotations in English poetry, French, German, etc. Now here what happens is, politically what happens is that these languages flows into another Indian language, which is Indian. And if done seamlessly, it creates its own aesthetics. You know, once T.S. Eliot told the aspiring Ted Hughes that if you want to be a poet, first read poems, write poems, and also write poems of other languages. It does not matter if you don't understand. Get your ears trained. And another thing is, if our subject sensibility are Indian, and by Indian I mean the extended Indian, the transnational, the cosmopolitan, and they're therefore accommodating or hosting other languages seamlessly, the aesthetics is there. I don't think would be much of a problem, because remember, language is compared to rivers, bhasha nodi. So what we were, you know, poets who wrote in English were often previously at the beginning were charged of having forked tongues. So now, why can't we have free flowing tongue? One language moving into the other without disrupting the motion or the thoughts, and create in these new normal times a new normal aesthetics, a new normal poetry of the time. And culturally again, I don't think this will be much of, you know, a kind of jarring thing. I could, you know, here could be a poem. There could be a poem like I think this was also on the IPPL platform, where we did find this poem where there were some, not only one, but there were some in which we had this technique. For example, in a poem like My Poet's Tired Today, just the first few lines, because I need to read a chunk if you want to understand that. Does a grain of sand really hold the soul of the universe? Does the universe really conspire? তবুও কি পেঁচা জাগে জান্নাত ধারে, উটের গ্রীবার মতো কোনো এক নিস্তব্ধতা আসে? Will he ever come back in his next birth? Perhaps. হয়তো মানুষ নয়, হয়তো বা সংকুচিল শালিকের বেশে। Jivanananda is very, Jivanananda Das is a poet who has been translated, but I believe to some extent untranslatable. Well, he finds a very nice place and seamlessly into the body of the English text. And if you ask me, well, how does a foreign reader read it? Well, there could be many answers. One answer could be to transcribe it in the Roman script. And this has been done in the Northeast. Esther Sion, she has included Khasi refrains in English poems. This gives us a sense of the conglomerate India, which I think, which I find very interesting. So it could be transcribed, and then, say here Bangla original or the Hindi original or the Marathi original, could be given there with the meaning. So we could be having a whole lot of very important Indian poets, contemporary poets, brought into the text. And we have so many schools of poetry. Could the IPPL be the first to begin this new school of poems, Indian English poems? I don't know. It's up to you how you look at it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ashadhar. Jarnadi, this question is also for Bashavidi. There are some, traditional foreign critics who think Indian poets in English, Indian poetry looks like translations. So whether it is a positive compliment or it has negativity in it, how do you read it?
Does Charnati want to answer this first?
No,
Yeah,
I think you take it first, being a, unquote. Yes.
Thank you for the question, Joydeep. I just want to go back to what Charnati was saying, and that is yes. Okay. Just Charnati, what you said about bilingual poetry, it's as the new normal, is quite interesting because it would be quite an honest transition, because that's the way a lot of the educated in India and those who are not literate speak. They merge from one language into another as they speak. So even the rickshawala in South India could be speaking in 3 languages quite spontaneously. So it would actually be a reflection of the Indian reality of multilingualism. So I actually second what you've just said. It would just be an honest expression in poetry of what we do anyway in our day-to-day lives in India. Now, going back to Joydeep's question, I think the whole idea that we, when Indians or so-called speakers of English, writers of English from non-white worlds, because you could be Dutch and settled in America and you could write in English, you would be accepted. But if you are brown, you're forever foreign. And we always carry our baggage of a developed country and our history and our politics with us. I think we have heard it quite a lot, but the whole thing is we are all translated beings. We are enriched by having more than one culture. We come from a multilingual, multicultural country, which actually gives us an amazingly rich fabric from within which to speak and speak out and reach out to the world. So I think being translated is perhaps one of the biggest compliments we could have from the Eurocentric critic and the Anglophone critic. But also to say that, just to go back to what Jharnadi was saying about Jivanananda Das, we are enriched by the fact that we know poetry in another language, our own and maybe other languages. And that is why I find myself, writing a poem and I realize, actually I wrote it after reading the poem about Shankatil, Abar Ashibo Phire, or Rabindranath, a song like Baadh Bhenge Dao. So I think we are all translated beings and we are the richer for it.
ঝর্ণাদি কিছু বলবেন তারপরে আমরা কবিতার রিডিং এ চলে যাব।
No, one thing, what I would also like to say, what Bashabi pointed out, that was also my point. The common man's language in India. Now young people can speak 3 or 4 languages equally well. So at times you don't know what that person's mother tongue is. So why can't we use the common man's language into poetry, thereby giving Indian poetry its own stamp of originality, its own inclusiveness. So that is one thing I believe we all need to consider, because after all, we so-called the English poets, quote unquote, are very, what should I say, protective, feel privileged to use English language, and then maybe smuggling in other languages. I use the word smuggling in other languages. Well, I think people would be a bit, I don't know, hesitant. But I believe there would be a new aesthetics in Indian poetry if we could think of this.
অসাধারণ, wonderful.
Let IPPL be the platform.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jharnadi. I think Nishi, Sangyuktadi, myself, and all the members will take it forward. Thank you, Jharnadi. Thank you.
Could I just make one comment?
Yeah.
I was talking about, this is off what we are discussing. I was talking about the statesman having a special place. And in fact, the 21st century, the COVID, the pandemic, the pandemonium, the technological advances, the laptops, you remember Srijato, laptop and TV, and you see how it goes viral. There again, we have media and poetry. That is a very interesting subject. And what I find, in fact, concludes my argument that we depend much on print journalism, on whatever we get from the media. Now we see poetry now goes back to the letters to the editor. You see how we are crossing the borders. And so Vishwa in Joshadhara Rai Chaudhuri writes letters. And also we have an English poet writing poems as letters to the editor. I think this is the ultimate triumph of poetry.
Wonderful. So we have one condition for all IBPL panelists, that you will have to read a poem, and both of you are so good poets. So can we start with Bashabidi for one poem? If you have a copy of your own book from, I think, the Ganga to the Te, the epic poem, if you read a part of it, do you have, Bashabidi?
I'll just have to go away and get it, Joydeep, because I don't have it here.
Okay.
Can you give me half a minute?
Yeah, sure.
My apologies and thank you for your patience.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
I'll just read the beginning and the end,
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
Because it's a very long poem. And Joydeep has given it more than one platform already. So these are the two rivers talking to each other through time. The two longest rivers in Scotland and India. Please don't think of the global map because then Tay becomes very small, but both flow from west to east and both have a shared history. So this is anthropomizing the rivers. They have their voices. Gonga. They call me Gonga. The story of my birth is a glorious myth. I am a dream of Lord Shiva's, rising as a stream, my Tandava, a liquid, secret, still, splurging from his knotted hair, my feminine will released to roam beyond this snowy lair. While the destroyer sleeps, his latent power leaps into my cascades, bidding me go forth and multiply, gushing through decades from the vast north through flattened plains down to my bay. What do they call you? On which day were you born? On which day were you conceived? My Celtic caves heaved as Nordic waves received the omen of my birth. Even before they set out for my shores, as Thor and Odin would ordain in years to come. They call me the Tay. The truth is, I too have a bay. My Firth. I have this isthmus of an island to cross, but yours is the earth where I would not be you. A subcontinent spread out for your good or your ill will to brazenly toss in. This too is north, but further north than you. They have laid out the broad hills for me to circle and cut through, spilling over rocky beds under heights so ancient and wise, weathered to gentleness, unlike the heady rise of your stately but youthful fold mountains. Gonga. Yes, it was there where I awoke to provoke the world to my capacious flow. When I left Shiva's coiled tresses for mortals, I percolated in diverse drops of frozen tears in the portals of gigantic caves where my waves vibrated at Gangotri. That too is north. Beyond the Garhwal hills, the rest is no myth. As I tumble forth in a mighty torrent that rents the sky, rushing down in sheer abandon, having forgotten my frozen, fetal beginnings. In the swirling ice, cold tears of Bhagirathi's streaming eyes. Hush, it is now my turn, says Tay. But there is no rush, for we have courses to run at our own pace. Let this not be a race to be done or won. And I'll read the end. Tay, you and I can only do what we do best. That is flow with the certainty of continuity. Gonga. Letting our waters' sacred truth seep into human consciousness as the source of life, like light and trees, the earth and breeze. Tay. Our rhythm spelling harmony, which if nurtured, can guarantee Shanti for eternity. Thank you.
Ashadhan, thank you so much, Pashubidhi. We are flowing like the river Tay and the Ganges. Charnadi, would you mind reading a poem from the Nomadic Trail?
Well, I don't have the nomadic trail here. Could I just
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, sure.
Since you are talking about the 21st century, so this is, well, 3 days back, very fresh 21st century, two very short poems. One, the first, in this, I call this the oxymoronic world. Present and absent, virtual and real. You don't know where one begins, where one ends. And the webinar itself is that world of virtual reality. So this poem is I have very short poems. One is Close, Open. When all the doors had closed, when all the priests had fled, when blindfold I roam among the ruins in the rain, soaked to my sotted mushroom bones, scrambling for a shelter, another door opens. I find myself waiting to receive me in. The guards have queued up for a thermal check. This is the first.
Yes.
And the second one, Dark Floyd. And below the title, I have a Pink Floyd song line. Us, 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 and them. Them, 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 them. Pink Floyd. When I proposed, I knelt down to my love with a red, red rose and asked, will you marry me? The world was sunrise red. When in despair, I knelt at the altar and prayed, oh Jesus, save me. And all the world was light. When my whiteness revulsed at the blackness of your skin, as did my slave-owning forefathers, I went on kneading with my knees till I could barely catch the words, I can't breathe. Dark clouds had gathered, but it refused to rain. The thunder roared, Black Lives Matter. Hashtag BLM. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bashubidi. Thank you, Jharnadi, for wonderful, thought-provoking session. And really, you gave us new dimensions to look at poetry in the 21st century. And thank you, Jharnadi and Bashubidi, for suggesting IPPL to take it forward. I hope with broad shoulders of Nishi, we'll take things forward. Thank you, Bashubidi. Thank you, Jharnadi. Over to Nishi. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful panel discussion. We have lots of things to think about. Thank you so much to Bashubidi, thank you Jharnadi, and thank you so much to Joydeep. I'm sure many of us in IPPL would be thinking about much of what you have said and maybe work on it as well. And I was just wondering about the role of social media as well in poetry that is written in these times. Thank you so much. So with this, we come to the end of the panel discussion. And we will now go on to the poetry reading session. And for this, I would ask Madhu Srivastav to please come and introduce and conduct the whole session. Madhu Srivastav teaches English at Bambuk Roman Kobi College, and she's an executive council member of IPPL, a poet. Her first volume of poems is in the press right now. So I'll just hand over to Madhu, and Madhu will conduct the poetry reading session. Madhu.
Thank you, Nishidi. Good evening, everybody.
And before Madhu could take over, could I just say something? Could I request people, everyone who is not reading, to please mute your audios? That helps in cutting off various kinds of noises which could be disruptive. Madhu.
Yes, thank you, Nishidi. Good evening, everybody. After this very interesting, engaging, enriching, and enlightening session on contemporary poetry, it's time we listen to some of the eminent contemporary poets, our IPPL poets, if I may call them so. We have poets reading in several languages, not many. As Shanjukta Di in the very beginning said, we would like to have poets reading in many, many languages. We have a few. Let us listen to them. We begin with Shushmita Banerjee, a poet who is going to read in Bangla. Shushmita Banerjee, I'm unmuting you. Shushmita Di. She's having some trouble. Okay, I think she's looking for help. We go to the next poet. We have Pranab Da with us, Pranab Ghosh. Poet Pranab Ghosh is going to read in English. Yes, he's unmuted. You're not audible, Pranab Da. Please unmute yourself.
Hello.
I'm trying. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. The first poem that I'm going to read is New Unity in Diversity During Lockdown Times. It's lockdown times, only stray dogs and cattle roam freely, birds too fly to their heart's content, but man lies in chains. It's lockdown times, the town square is deserted, the cinema halls, the malls, the art exhibition halls are all closed, and there is embargo on free movement. It's lockdown times, you are confined within 4 walls with TV churning out news of deaths, more viral infection and more deaths. It's lockdown times, and the diverse world with its diverse people, with its diverse cultures, is united in death, a new unity in diversity. My second point will be vision of the world. Step by step, you were drawing closer to me. Step by step, I was moving backwards. Step by step. You kept on moving, step by step. I turned around only to find you moving towards me from the other direction, step by step. I turned left only to find you moving towards me, step by step. I turned right only to find you moving towards me, step by step. I tried to move away, ahead, behind, left and right, but could not move a step. You were there everywhere, moving towards me, step by step. I closed my eyes, my inner being trembled. I kept my eyes closed. I could hear your footsteps moving towards me, step by step. I tried to run, I tried to shout, I tried to. Suddenly, the breeze began to blow. Your hurried footsteps were drawing close. I opened my eyes. I could now feel your presence.
Hello.
You were there on all sides, breathing faster. I tried to look at your eyes, I spotted a glow. I then looked to my left, to my right, ahead of me and behind. Your eyes were glowing, you were stationary. Glow engulfed you. There was only glowing light all around me. I tried to touch the glow, you disappeared, but the glow remained drawing closer and closer. In the glow, I could see the burning desire of our times. Men and women, boys and girls, buses and trucks, trains and air trucks, fighter jets and tanks and armored vehicles, everything was burning. Salons, parlors, malls, restaurants, temples, churches, mosques, everything, everything, everything. Then there was darkness. I called out your name, I shouted at the top of my voice. There was only a lull, a silence or an answer, not even an echo, not even a vibration in the wind. The breeze had long stopped blowing. In the darkness, I could not find myself again. Where are you? Where am I? Where is our existence? Where is our civilization? Was it a vision? Was it a premonition? Or was it a dream? Or was it? You lay dead everywhere, on my left, on my right, ahead of me, behind me. The vision dead. Is Krishna alive? Am I supposed to do any more? Thanks.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Pranabda, for your excellent rendition. Shushmita Banerjee, poet Shushmita Banerjee is with us now. Now I invite Shushmita Banerjee to read her poems.
নমস্কার, শুভ সন্ধ্যা। পড়ছি আমার কবিতা কলরব। গ্রামে গঞ্জে মফস্বলে, শহরে নগরে, পাহাড় সমুদ্র নদী তটের ঘাটে ঘাটে উঠেছে কলরব। সমস্ত মুখ নীরবতা ভেঙে মশাল থেকে মশালে কলরব ছড়িয়েছে দিকে দিকে। মন থেকে মনে, ব্যক্তি থেকে ব্যক্তিতে, প্রতিবাদ থেকে প্রতিরোধে চুমিয়ে যাচ্ছে গোপনে বা প্রকাশ্যে কলরব। গলা জল হলাহলে সভ্যতার অহংকার সাজ দাঁড়িয়ে রয়েছে আজ। ওই মারণ রোগের যন্ত্রণা কাতরতা নিয়ে, ওই গর্ভিণী হস্তিনীর যন্ত্রণা কাতরতা নিয়ে, শ্বাসরোধে নিহত কালো মানুষটার যন্ত্রণা কাতরতা নিয়ে, অপরাধী মানব চৈতন্য মাথা হেঁট করে দাঁড়িয়ে রয়েছে আজ গলা জল বিষে। যাদের আত্ম অভিমান উষ্ণিসে ছড়িয়েছে বৃষের রক্তাভ চোখের উন্মাদনা, তাদেরই অপরাধে মানব চৈতন্য সভ্যতার কাছে হাঁটু মুড়ে বসেছে এসে আজ। নত হওয়ার, ক্ষমা চাওয়ার সময় সমাগত জেনে। মানুষের চেতনারা ঘাটে ইতিহাস, কলরব ছড়ায় বহু দূরে। মানুষের বিপন্ন অস্তিত্বের শিকড়ে মূলে। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, Shushmita Banerjee. This was really lovely. Now I invite poet Shomanitra Munshi to recite her poem. Shomanitra, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Madhu. But wasn't Rajoshi before me? Is it okay if I go now?
You just follow.
Okay. Madhu, I believe I can't share my screen, right?
You want to show something?
No, I just want to put up my poem while I read it, you know, because
Okay, yes,
of connectivity. If you allow,
I think it can be done if Madhu allows it.
Yeah. It's just easier for you to follow. That's what I thought.
Yes, your screen is being shared.
It is being shared.
Is it visible?
No.
Yeah, but we do see a screen.
Sorry for interrupting. You'll just have to click on the audio. Sorry, on the icons that is coming beneath your in the lower line of your laptop.
Yeah, but
then you can start sharing. Then it would be visible. Right now, only your desktop screen is visible, which is Zoom.
Let me see.
Share screen at the bottom.
Yeah, I can see it, but I cannot see my poem, though I had opened it.
Oh, Madhu, this is your screen that is being seen.
Yeah, I'm seeing Madhu's.
Yeah, wait, I'll just change. You change that thing to all participants.
Okay, let me see.
Yes, I have done it.
Okay.
I've done it. Now you can start sharing.
Okay.
Madhu, you have to stop sharing first.
Okay, one second. Yes, I've stopped.
Yes, so now you can start sharing.
Can you see my poem now?
You have to start sharing your screen now.
Okay, let me see.
You have to start sharing your screen.
And now?
See below your screen. Yes, now it's visible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks everyone for having me here. It's just one poem. Just thought it will be better if you had the words before you. The Epic of Life. I am on trial tonight, pleading guilty, pleading crime, 1,000 allegations written on my forehead, 1,000 blasphemies rolled into my tongue, 1,000 violations strapped around my body. I grew up in years, in body, but I couldn't leave my innocence behind. I couldn't hold back my tears at the sight of a broken nest. Just feathers, twigs, and leftover grains I gave them, but no birds, no eggs, signs of abandonment, remnants of a home that once was. Oh, that's life. Grow up, will you? They said impatiently and looked the other way. My soul is tormented by inevitability, inevitability of disease, of loss of near ones, of imminent storms that will destroy nests. And somehow, even the thought of happiness spews guilt, and I hear vicious vultures of retribution circling. My isolation from everyone and all around is absolute. সকল লোকের মাঝে বসে আমার নিজের মুদ্রা দোষে আমি একা হতেছি আলাদা, আমার চোখেই শুধু ধাঁধা, আমার পথেই শুধু বাধা, আমার হৃদয় তাদের হৃদয়ের মতো নাকি, আমার মন তাদের মনের মতো নাকি, তবু কেন এমন একাকী, তবু আমি এমন একাকী। I have made quick trips to heaven, to hell, but I see myself nowhere. I am neither. I just am. I could have been a young widow, desperately struggling to free myself from the clutches of those trying to hurl me in the funeral pyres of my dead husband. Did my dreadful cries and howls render the air you breathed somewhat less breathable that night? Did the unwanted stench of melting flesh that caught your nostrils by surprise make dinner somewhat less palatable that night? Did the judges above pass a sentence? I could have been Browning's hero at the beginning and could have walked over roses, roses all the way with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. Or I could have been the fallen patriot a year later, one being paraded for execution with crowds gathered at the shambles gate to witness it. I could have been Socrates, surrounded by young men drinking in his wisdom. Or I could have been Socrates, stoically looking at the bowl filled with hemlock. I may have been a hero or a loser. I may have been both a hero and a loser. To whom? Who knows? Who decides? Who rules? Who records history? What time is this? Somehow, whenever they've drawn the circle of inclusion, I've just been outside it, by my innocence, by my honesty, by my thoughts, by my deeds, by my gender, by my color, an outsider. There was something around my neck, all right. Not sure it's a noose or a garland. Thank you.
Thank you, Shomonitra, for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Do we have Manali? Okay, we have Rajoshi with us. Now, I invite poet Rajoshi Narayan Patranovish to read his poems.
Good evening. It's very nice to see a lot of unmasked poets here. Well, I'll read a couple of very short sonnets. The first one is titled Abundance. Don't look for order in abundance. Abundance creates its own order. Don't look for clarity in darkness. Darkness creates its own clarity. Don't look for divisions in identity. Don't look for divisions in identity. Identity creates its own divide. Don't look for lust in love. Love makes its own lust. I look for you in my dark depth. Depth glows in your flickering flame. I look for a daylit night. Night burnt by sleeping sun. Wave of rhymes, rules, orders, and you. You fill my abundance. I look for you in my dark depth. Depth glows in your flickering flame. I look for a daylit night. Night burnt by the sleeping sun. Waves of rhymes, rules, orders, and you. You fill my abundance. And the next one is titled Rolled Over. Rolled Over. We met first in heaven. We met first in heaven. You with the apple and I with some hope. I tasted you. Nights rolled over. We met last in solitude. You with count of stars and I with memories of the last. I touched you. Eternal longings rolled over. We met in cycles of intoxications. You as my love, my longing, my lust, and I as your dream, your muse, your mission. We mingled in faces, phases, times rolled over. Through graves and pyres, hymns and choirs. Through graves and pyres, hymns and choirs, our children wait for us. We rolled over. Our children wait for us. We rolled over. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajarshi. Rajarshi has been reading poems throughout the lockdown. It was nice having you here. We have Manali with us. Yes, Manali. Our next poet is a very young poet whom we are going to listen to for the first time, I suppose. Manali Chaudhary, welcome. Please read your
Thank you, ma'am.
poems.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, if you give me permission, I have 3 short poems, 2 English and one I just became a little ambitious, one a Hindi poem, if that's not a problem.
Yes, you can read.
Thank you. In these uncertain times, my first poem actually is about self-questioning, and it's called View. I have a view. I have a 360-degree view. It pans from around the history of whatnot to the minutest leaf that grew. I have a view. It takes me around, it takes me under, it takes me a way bit above. I remember, and then I blink, and then I see all that love. I had a view. It chokes, it frees, it backs, it leaves. It speaks of calm and thunder. It sets me sail and instructs to fly and walk among trees asunder. I have a view. My room is on the northern shore. Not a lot goes on behind it. It sprays my face with the starry days just when opens the window behind. A pokey splinter flies in so fast, just in time to remind that there's an open chamber, a trunk full of ghosts that smile and chirp and grind. Around the room, in the unseen corner, under the window behind, and I was so gay, believing from where the wind blew. It struck my gentle corded core, and now I wonder, do I truly have a view, a 360-degree view? So this self-questioning actually gets a little positive in my next poem, which I wrote for Navabarsho. And I call it Shubha Navabarsho, but then obviously it has a new meaning now in these times of pandemic. And it goes like this. It's so dark that it almost smells so. It's so dark that the road ahead looks unreal. It's so dark that life itself seems 1,000 light years away, smiling peacefully from the dead cold moon every single evening. And our hearts sound scared, each one. But then it is only a tunnel, like a long drawn battle. We have lost count of the paces, only the sound of us walking. The feet keep going because they know. Had it been an indefinite journey, they would know. It is not, and they know. They carry the burden of all our worries and trudge gently upon the snow. By and by, the warmth will come. The world will change. The birds will rise. The winds will hurry. The fireflies fly. By and by, the warmth will come. Before the light, the warmth will come. And the feet will run towards a new day when we all will find a peace. Amen. And I just got, as I said, a little ambitious, and I penned down, set of Hindi lines. I don't know if it makes a poem. Anyway, I know you people are extremely forgiving, so please pardon my ambition. It's called Bhatka. मैंने भेजा था एक संदेशा, तैरते हुए लहरों के लिफाफों में बांधकर, पर वो पानियों में घुल सी गई। मैंने भेजा था एक संदेशा बादलों के झुंड में छुपाकर, पर वो हवाओं में पिघल सी गई। चेहरों के मुस्कानों के रास्ते रवाना तो हुए थे कुछ लफ्ज, पर वो लम्हे बनकर सिलसिलों में उलझ सी गई। सिखाया था उनको शाम के रास्ते से गुजरने को, पर शहर के इंतजार में वो ढल सी गई। न पहुंचा मेरा संदेशा कहीं, जहां भी जाते हैं पता नहीं क्यों भटक सी जाते हैं। चौखट से झांका तो देखा, मेरी तो मंजिल ही भटक सी गई। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much for this wonderful poems. It was really so nice listening to you.
Thank you.
Now we go over to our next poet. I invite our very new member, Sunil Bandari, to read his poems. Yes, Sunil, you're unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
So, for people who are not familiar with me, I thought let me start with a poem which might be familiar to you, and then I'll come to a new one. This one was made famous because it was recited by Sharmila Tagore and tuned by Shorendra and Somujit, the two musicians you might or might not know. So here's the poem which was recited in the song which was interweaved with the poem. It's called Coffee, You and Me. Write me in, stranger, into your poem once. I see you brewing with your coffee as you look at me fondly. I am much of what you see. I'm also what you think me to be. We could build a story with that. You will ask no questions. I will tell you no lies. I will be your lines, your finest muse. And then we will return to our realities, knowing ourselves to be better than what the world thought us to be. Coffee with you would take me back to when I was what I dreamt I could be, when life hadn't given me labels. You and I, even as we escape, would be discoverers of our finest selves. Thank you. So, thank you. There's another one, a very short one.
Yes, please go ahead.
This one, I've got a choice. Do you want to hear a poem on religion or do you want to hear one on Calcutta?
I think we have had enough of religion and its politics. Go for Calcutta.
I'll go for Calcutta. Okay. So it's called Calcutta, A Lover's Epitaph. Some of my friends here would have heard it, but I like the poem. I hope you like it too. There is no other place for me. Sorry, let me start again. So sorry. There is no other place for me. Calcutta's streets have been mapped by my heart, and I can stop anywhere and tell you stories of when I was a child and the city a youth, of when I grew up and the city refused to. But in its heart now lie crumbling memories of all who grew tired of waiting for its mornings to burst out into light, even as I sit on the curb and sip tea from earthen teacups grafted from its steam. I am still a lover, though in the shadow of its decaying facades and tired cathedrals, waiting for its glory to emerge from its cemeteries, the way a strand of grass cracks open a gravestone. I have invested too much of myself into this city, into the bloodstream of its roads, into the pores of its eccentricities, too much pain, too much sweat, too much semen, too much poetry to now say, I abandon you. But I despair of this city, this lover. Doesn't it owe me anything? But it lurches from one wound to another as if life's expositions are lesser, if not written in scars. Now I feel abandoned. The city's faithlessness is now not of the senses, it is a disembowelment of my belief. And if in that deceit lies its definition, then it is also the epitaph to my irreparably broken heart. Thank you.
It was really wonderful, Sunil.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, we go over to our next poet. I welcome poet Chandrani Mukherjee.
A very good evening to all present here. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is really a rare opportunity for me to address such a marvelous, spirited, and enriching audience. I would like to thank IPPL and Nishidi in particular for reminding me to read out one of my very whimsical compositions. Recently, we've been through a lot of experiences, and the metaphors of our lives have become very kaleidoscopic. Journey has taken on a complete new meaning for us. But I have chosen to share a lighter moment with you. This poem that I'm going to recite was composed during one of my daily trips to school every morning and is inspired mainly by my co-passengers and the myriad conversations. So here it goes. Conversations. Part 1. Did I hear you right? Are you planning to come home? Really? I must plan a big celebration. Oh no, of course, as you please. When can you let me know the final date of arrival? I'll meet you at the airport. No, but why not? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm pretty. Your mom won't mind me when she meets me. A second part. Madhurima, have you stepped out? It's waterlogged. There is knee-deep water everywhere. I don't think we will have class at college today. Want to catch the movie? Yes, let's do it. Part 3. How many times have I told you? Your brothers want to deprive you of your share of the house. That house belongs to you as much as it does to them. What does it matter? That you couldn't contribute for repairs? You are your parents' heir after all. You must not give up. You can buy a car with the money, of course. You must put your foot down. Fourth part. Why is the bus so muddy? I'm sorry, just a minute, please. Yes. Why is the bus so muddy? Ah, the seats are full. Where will I sit? You should have told me. Oh, conductor, do give me my ticket. My nails, my nails. Part 5, in the concluding part, this speaker was over the phone and speaking in whispers. I've boarded the bus. I've texted office that I'm too ill to come today. Shall we meet at the usual place? Guess what I'm wearing? She smiles like a shy teenager. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Chandrani. It was wonderful listening to you. We now go over to our next poet, Kausambi Patro. Yes, Kausambi, you're here. Please unmute yourself. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you. I'm not a poet. I'm going to read Maya Angelou's poem. Give 1 minute. I just misplaced her. What? I want to thank IEPPL for organizing this wonderful event. I am going to read Maya Angelou's poem, Caged Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful thrill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But the caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tired, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful thrill of things unknown, but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Kausambi. Well, this is the essence of IPPL. You do not need to be a poet yourself to be a member of IPPL or read here. Loving poetry is enough. Okay, we go over to our next poet, Sudeshna Chakraborty. Sudeshna.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as one of the poets earlier started their poem with, I would like to quote that I am on trial here tonight as well, because I'm doing something like this for the first time, and Navonita and Nishidi, I should thank them for that, and that too in the presence of Jharnadi, who will always remain first and foremost my teacher, and so slightly apprehensive of what I'm going to do. But anyway, this poem I wrote when I was struggling with the 4-day long power cut and water shortage during Amphan. So that was the trigger. For 100 years now, this wait for one shower of rain, 100 years of looking for deliverance from this pain, planted in the desert of Manatee for 100 years, I have been searching for humanity in vain. A misfit because I don't ask, creeper-like for shelter, for support, a misfit because oak-like I invite, I seduce you into my shade. The roving bee, shining with pollen, comes visiting, and in a passing encounter that was supposed to be called love, impregnates me. I feed this being suddenly implanted within me with my very vitality, soaking the moisture through the roots, feeding the embryo with my life sap. And yet, for all my efforts, the fruit is not for me to take pride in. I fulfilled the ideal of motherhood. I gave birth, but the generations don't carry my name. For 100 years, I have been smiling self-satisfiedly as my child adorns the dinner plate of some stranger man, smiling even as I prepare for another cycle of my holy duty. If I do not flower for 1 year, I am barren. If during a storm some of my branches tangle in the foliage of my neighbor, desperately as we try to shield each other from the tempest's onslaught, I am branded transgressive. And my branches are brutally cut for the man to march on ahead, no strings attached. Time passes in the struggle for survival. Soon, the chlorophyll in my leaves loses its greenness. Almost immediately, the manly axe hits mercilessly at my once fertile womb. The brownish sap, blood, gushes out, but no tears, alas. All seem to have dried up with the milk. With a resigned sigh that resounds like a crash, I fall to the ground. As I slowly ebb away, I can see the green sapling planted next to my browning stub to replace me in the sacred duty of creation. Unaware of the demands soon to be made on her freedom, the sapling girl smiles lovingly as the wind caresses her hair. If I had the courage or the breath left in me, I would warn her. Wake up, woman. Dreams do not become us. I wish I could tell her that to take undiluted pleasure in the riotous colors of her petals, the lush velvet of her sepals, she will have to wait another 100 years like I have. I wish I could warn her that she too is born 100 years too soon, like I was. Thank you.
Thank you, Sureshna. That was really, really, really very good. I heard you for the first time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm reading for the first time here. Thank you.
Now we have a very young poet amongst us, Jamima Nasreen. Where are you, Jamima?
Hello, am
Yes.
I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Very good evening to everyone. I'm very happy to be a part of IPPL and this webinar. Thank you so much. And I'm also not a poet, and coincidentally, I have also chosen Maya Angelou. So here it goes. I'm reading for the first time ever. Okay, so here it goes. Still, I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trot me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I have got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I love like I have got gold mines, digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I have got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I am a black ocean, leaping and wide. Welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Living behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jemima, it's so sweet of you. And that's again, even in this time of lockdown, it's such a wonderful evening of poets and poetry reading that we just forget the depressing, circumstances we are in. So over to our next poet, Chandraboli Ganguly. Chandraboli, where are you?
Am I audible?
Chandraboli, your video is off.
Just a minute, ma'am. Is it all right now?
Yes.
Okay. A very good evening to everybody, and it's really a great opportunity that you have provided to us, the youngsters, and often we feel very lost when we see that we are amidst such established people. However, we'll have to take our baby steps into the world, and thank you so much for taking us by our hands and leading us out there. I'm going to recite a poem, an English poem, which I had written about a few months back. It was not exactly on a pandemic, but when the pandemic was brewing and people were blaming God, sometimes philosophy, and there was this constant battle between science and religion. What should you believe in order to rise, in order to get over it? At that time, I had the feeling that if we as human beings, we who are able to empathize with everybody, if we were able to empathize with God, would we be able to get a better perspective of what's going on? So I begin my poem. The Eternal Ferryman. I write this poem for you. Each new letter and another star in heaven as palm leaves sway like an ember, a spark in the gleaming heap of coal in the sunset dark. At Rishikesh, the water is green. A bridge with thousand spans stands, and clumsily the pilgrims cross the vast expanse. But no pot of gold beneath. The water snores. The river flows on. Lute green cacti rise. Next, a group of stones. Hansel and Gretel sleep on their own little boat. Beside them stretched in agony Cordelia, in sympathy Ophelia. As out of the caves the water roars, pauses, and is still. At Rishikesh the water is deep, deep and green, green but clear, like some distant coral isle watching the empire disintegrate. And I have known the ways of nirvana, the paths that Schopenhauer and Solomon and the Buddha showed. You're formless like a river. Your arms are thin. You flow like a stream, like an ugly line, like a ditch. Oh, I drown into the stream of darkness, and all is empty around me. Silver splashes. At Rishikesh, the sky will frown, looking down from bearded clouds that look down as they encroach, until the river one night will spew its accumulated hate. Immortality is a drive in the dark water, along a wrong path, a cul-de-sac without end. Ripples of my existence close around me, wring my neck. The ferryman rows the boat, he who knows it all, with the river humming, oh, over and over and over again, telling me it is I who steer, and I, the seer, understand not God and his ways, and yet I empathize, cup my hands in front of his face to catch the teardrop before it fell into the waters in Rishikesh. You're just up from the sea, perhaps, and the stars glitter like sea salt in your hair that is tangled as the seaweed knots the sea wove around you. Let me spin the light around each star into a web, and in the center the tarantula dances the deadly dance of temptation. What lies in the center? In the empty orb-like black disk that stretches into your eyes, coming out of your mind. Words, empty words, more words, and still more words. And across it all sails the eternal ferryman. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I must say that was pretty deep for your age. Would like to listen to more of your poetry. Okay, over to our next poet, Shreya Shah. Shreya, where are you? Well, yes. Shreya, I've unmuted you. Yes, please read your poem.
শুভ সন্ধ্যা। আমার আসলে আবৃত্তিতে কোনো রকম কোনো অভিজ্ঞতা নেই এবং লেখালেখিরও খুবই কম, তবুও একটা জাস্ট প্রচেষ্টা করলাম।
I will interrupt Shreya. Hold your microphone properly. Yes.
Am I audible to everyone?
Voice is very low. একটু কানের ওটা মুখের কাছে একটু নিয়ে বলো, শোনা যাচ্ছে না।
এখন
পরিষ্কার। Yes, continue.
ঠিক আছে এখন?
হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে।
আমি একটি স্বরচিত কবিতাই পাঠ করছি। তো যেহেতু কোনো রকম কোনো অভিজ্ঞতা নেই আগের আবৃত্তি করার, তো সেই কারণে প্রথমেই ক্ষমা প্রার্থী। খবর রাখো, একটি একটি করে পাতা ঝরেছে, ভিতর থেকে ছেকে ধরেছে ঘুন পোকা। আধি ভৌতিক ভাবে নির্জীব দাঁড়িয়ে তুমি, তোমার ডালপালা বিস্তার করে। একটু একটু করে স্তিমিত হচ্ছি আমি, শ্যাকশ্যাকে ঠোঁট, নীলচে শিরা যন্ত্রণায় কুঁকড়ে। এই পরিণতি আমার প্রাপ্য, উপলব্ধি দিয়েছ আমার অন্তরে সুপ্ত শঙ্খচূড়ের, কিংবা আমার স্বর্ণলতা সত্তার। আজ সঞ্জীবনীর শেষ বিন্দুও শেষের পথে, শেষ পাতাটি ঝরার অপেক্ষায় আমি। ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you. খুবই ভালো করেছো, ক্ষমা চাওয়ার মতো কিছু হয়নি, অভিনন্দন। Okay, we go to our next poet. She is not a new poet at all, but yes, she has joined us from overseas. Over to our very own Lopa Banerjee. Lopa. Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. A very good evening to all my dear members and esteemed panelists of IPPL. Jharnadi, my former teacher, how can I forget you? Especially for you, I joined today seeing your name. And Bashubidi, a big hi, Joydeep Da, Nishidi, everybody, thank you so much for inviting me for this stimulating session of poetry amid the pandemic. It's really stimulating. So for today's session, I would read out two short poems of mine. Actually, I have two book collections of poems, Let the Night Sing and Woman and Her Muse. But today I have chosen two poems which are from my upcoming collection, untitled yet. The first one that I would be reading today is titled Otherness. It is about a journey of a cancer patient, actually, which I wrote in a poetry and mental healing workshop in Washington, DC, reflecting on the lone journey of a cancer patient. We were actually having a session on poetry as a medium of art, which is cathartic. And this poem strives to attain catharsis. My otherness is the whiff of smoke settling in my wet, clumsy earth, a blurred mantra of smothered fairy tales. When I comb chunks of hair falling with pale, restless hands, I soak in the familiar smell of my otherness. My otherness, when I undress me, hangs loose in the crevices of my moon flesh. My otherness settles in like quick bursts of epileptic pain. My otherness, the solitude of the alchemy of my dreams as they wash past my shores. I'm the night, the impenetrable darkness, the died out candle of my otherness. Do you smell, sniff, taste my otherness? The burial ground of my peripheral being, refusing to belong to the cacophonous oneness? Like a moon's flickering rays, just before her pivotal dissolving, I dissolve into the black sea, the dense, pirouetting dark of my otherness. The second poem, again a short one, is titled Grandmother Mine, and it is written for my grandmother after her death, who was the first one to call me a feminist when I was only 13. Grandmother mine, I am the legacy of your progeny. I am the legacy of your progeny, the flesh, the bones, the blood of your seed, the slow death of your sounds, drenched in threatened subservience. I wake, roam around your ancient seas, birth life, rattle sound, rattle loud, screaming against supremacist songs. This is how I survive, cooing your Bengali rain songs, building my cocoon around overdose of memories, your horror stories of leaving behind the torn, shaken Bangladesh, the river Padma, mothering my girlhood revolution. I'm the forbidden dance, the onset of new seasons, the distant language, the thirst, the rhythm of a revolution which you have learned well to deny. Grandmother mine, I'm the déjà vu of your centuries of stories, your unborn cadence of your language. You had rapped with crushing silence. I'm the importunate one, inhaling hot oil in your airless rooms where you sometimes spoke of matriarchs and feminists to be, of nomads whom your cracked earth could no longer sustain or shelter. I wake between continents, the skin of my ancestors panted in my embryo. I am the renewed song of your thirst, the hunger of my mother, dressed up in a liberation song. This is how I survive. Topping and screwing old definitions of the womb, making claims on my body, writing down its verses in blood and dark ink. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Lopa. Now over to our last poet for the evening. For this evening only, because I'm sure we are going to meet again and again. I welcome Uma Rai Srinivasan, who is a new member and was going to read her poems for the first time today. Welcome, Umaji. Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. There has been a serious and somber mood generated this evening, from which, with your permission, I whisk you away to Shukumar Rai world. I read two of my translations from Abul Tabul. Baburam Shapuri. Baburam the Snake Man. Baburam Snake Man, whither are you bound? Get me please 2 snakes, all safe and sound. Snakes those are tame and also quite sane, feed on milk rice and are limp and lean. Those that sting not, spring not, bite or spite, those which are truly ashamed to fright and fight. Bring only snakes, those are stingless, toothless, hornless, clawless, hootless, harmless. Snakes that hiss not, whiz not, are blind and kind. Race not, run not, please go and find. I will catch them, teach them, preach them too. Box them, bash them, beat them black and blue. My next poem, Ganir Budo, the band of the song. It was a scorching summer's day, and mindless of keeping people at bay, our Bhishwalochana Sharma shot his song. From Delhi to Burma, the song did gong. As the song went bang, it swirled and span, round and round and round, on and on and on. Some did fly, some died, some others did hide. For God's sake, stop it, they cried. The cattle of the land that gathered, they promptly fell in a heap untethered. But Bhishwalochana heeded not. Would he care for the plight of others' lot? The quadrupeds then fell in a swoon. Their limbs were thrown up on that noon. Alas, the aqualives were in woe, and wondered who could make such a row. The trees on the streets were hit with the song. They promptly went down and fell in a throng. The avian creatures flying in the sky, as the somersaulted cried, "Oh, fie!" All urged, "Oh dear, please do us relief. For God's sake, hold your song and let us live." With the force of his song, the heaven shakes, the mansions break, the earth so quakes. But in desperation, Vishwalochana has no digression and sings with aggression. The song awakened that nutty old goat. The rhythm of the song, how well he caught. Indeed, not once did he miss a beat. He simply aimed at the bum with his butt. Ouch! Vishwalochana cried in no fun. And at last, at once, his song went mum. Thank you.
Thank you, Umarai, for these wonderful translations. We have read his poems in Bangla, but listening to you was a different kind of pleasure. Before we go to the vote of thanks, I invite our president, Professor Shanjukta Dashgupta, to make her observations and say something, because this is the first webinar organized by IPPL. So we all want to listen to her observations. Over to Shanjukta.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No observations as such, but I'm all for webinars now. I wonder what we were doing with those silly seminars. Because webinar means what has happened today. We have created history in IPPL. We have a poet from Edinburgh who also founded the IPPL. We have a poet from Texas. We have an advisory committee member from Delhi, all on the same platform. That is, the entire world is here in the webinar. Yes? And of course, we can ask a few tough questions to Lopa about what is happening in her country, but we will not do that. But this is really exhilarating for all of us who have been with IPPL since its inception. And it is so wonderful to hear all the new poets, because this time we said we would like to listen to the poetry read by the new poets. And it's just wonderful. I am in great admiration for these new poets who read today, and they all have such lovely names too. But they read their poems. They also chose Maya Angelou, who is one of my favorite poets, and also because she's one of the first feminists of a particular movement. And so I am really delighted. The only thing you can miss about this webinar is there is no cup of tea and no shingara. And so on that note, I think we will go forward with more webinars, and those of us who have been part of this particular webinar today, if you have suggestions, if you have comments, if you have ideas that you can think of which we can address in our next webinar, we would love to do that. So please let us know how you received this webinar and what you felt about being with us together for 2 hours. Imagine, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, very few really went away because I was watching the participants count, and there weren't too many people leaving at all. And that really means that for 2 hours, imagine I couldn't sit anywhere in a class for 2 hours. I used to bunk the second one, however good it might have been, because it is impossible for me to sit for too long for anything. But this one kept me absolutely rapt. And all the poems were very well read, from Rajashri to Pranab to Sunil, and of course everyone. And then, as if that was not all, we had a Bangla poem, we had a Hindi poem, we had a translation, two translations from some of the very well-known poems in Bengal. Many of us can recite those poems, Baburam Shapure, and to hear the English version was a great pleasure for us. And I hope that our IPPL Executive Committee members, who are so dynamic, who are always ready to perform, even when their colleges reopen, they will be as active. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shanjukta ma'am, for
you
your
so much.
wonderful words of encouragement. Now over to Nabonita Sengupta for the vote of thanks. It was a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Madhu. It is my proud privilege to deliver this vote of thanks on this wonderful evening of poetry reading and discussions on new poetry of 21st century. My heartiest gratitude on behalf of the IPPL to the eminent panelists, Professor Jharna Sanyal and Professor Bashavi Fraser, for this extremely enriching and interesting discussion on various aspects of poetry. A big thanks to the moderator, Dr. Joydeep Sharangi, also for moderating the session so wonderfully. Professor Bashavi Fraser also deserves a special thanks. Bashavi to all of us. She deserves a special thanks for creating this IPPL, for giving us this platform. And Dr. Joydeep Sharangi, Joydeepta had been the extremely enthusiastic vice president of the IPPL, who's helped the organization today. A very big thank you to all the poets who have recited such wonderful poems today. And it was lovely listening to all of you. This is a new mode of presentation. We are all getting used to this technology thing. And it is a moment of immense pride and pleasure to see so many IPPL people breaking out of this technological hindrance and coming out to read poems online. This is the first IPPL International webinar, and I thank all those who had attended this event today via Zoom as well as via FB Live. We are live streaming this event, and there are quite a number of watchers there as well. It's a moment of great pleasure to find Professor Mala Srilal here with us, and it's extremely it's very interesting to see so many people from different parts of the world and the country gathering here today to listen to this webinar. No word of thanks is enough for Professor Sanjukta Dasgupta. And she is forever there with brimming with energy, her experience and her knowledge, guiding us always forward in these, even in these difficult times, to make IPPL such a great success. Another thank you goes to Nishidi, Dr. Nishi Pulugurtha, the secretary of IPPL, and she has been very enthusiastic in organizing this event. Madhu Srivastav deserves another round of applause for hosting this event and the first IPPL online event. So a big thank you to Madhu. Before and no IPPL event is complete without its members. We have almost a great number of our members are watching this event online now from here or from Facebook. So gratitude towards them also, because it's from your listening and your encouragement that all these events are successful. Before we end this session, I would just like to say that even in these difficult times, IPPL is open for membership. You can find all the membership details in our web page, which is ipplkolkata.wordpress.com. We have an annual membership of 1,000 rupees annually and a biannual membership. There is also a student membership for 300 annually. We also have an IPPL Facebook page, this Intercultural Poetry and Performance Library Facebook page. We would like all our poetry lovers to go to that page and like the page so that you can get all the notifications of all the events that we are going to host in future. And wishing you all a very happy, healthy period and a creative period ahead. With that note, I would like to say a big thanks again to all the members, all the audience, and everybody who were a part of this event. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
I
you,
would
everybody.
like to thank Navneeta for the
Thank
vote
you,
of
Navneeta.
thanks. It would not have been possible without you. Thank you all. It was a lovely evening. On this note, we end the Zoom and the live. Be safe and do take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Good night.